Well, welcome back to the City Rev Life Podcast. You are joining us for a special edition of the podcast where we are going to be engaging in conversations over the next couple weeks, engaging in conversations with people, leaders in our city. And today I'm joined with Marsha Wagner. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
Yes, that's right. This is your second time on the podcast.
Yes.
And you are
Huge
the
honor.
principal of Pembroke Lakes Elementary School.
Correct.
Right? I got that right?
Yes, you sure did.
Awesome. So we're excited to have you. And I guess just to begin, you want to share a little bit about your journey and maybe your desire to, or what led to the desire to pursue education in the first place. How did you become a principal? How does one become a principal? Love to hear that.
Oh, that's a fun journey. I knew I wanted to be a teacher from the time that I got out of diapers, I think.
Wow.
I was the kind of kid who would come home from school, take a picture off the wall and put my chalkboard on the nail, unscrew the stick to the blinds, and I would use it as my pointer, and I would teach all my bears and dolls. So
were you a little bossy as a kid towards the other kids?
You know, I really couldn't be because I was the baby. I had two older brothers in my family, and they did not let me boss them around.
Hence the bears, not your siblings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I mean, every once in a while, I could convince my brother to be the bus driver for my bears.
Nice. Okay.
That's a whole nother story, but sometimes I could convince them to join me. And so as I pursued my bachelor's in education, I knew fairly early on that I would want to become an administrator and decided to pursue my master's in educational leadership just to kind of get it out of the way so that when I was ready to do it, that it would just be there and ready. And so I was a teacher. I became a math coach. And when I was a math coach, my principal at the time really wanted me to become her assistant principal. And she constantly gave me tasks and talked me up to her director. And she got a call one day, and it was her director saying that there was an opening for an assistant principal position at Cooper City Elementary and that he wanted me to apply for it. And I said to her, what did you do? Like, I'm not ready to be an assistant principal. And this whole conversation that we had was based on the fact that I would stay here in this school. And now look at the mess you've gotten me into. So, I mean, what do? What's the next step, right? So we call a support staff meeting and all of us come together and we're all talking about what we do in response to this request from the director. Do I go on the interview? Do I respectfully decline? And so the consensus around the table was just go on the interview. No one ever lands a job on the first interview anyway. So just go on it and you'll be good. My principal at the time says, if she interviews, she's going to get that job. And she was right.
Wow.
I remember pulling into my parking spot with the sign that said assistant principal. And I thought to myself, how did I even get here? How did this even happen? But God definitely swung that door wide open for me, and he clearly had a plan for me in my life. And I was blessed with the responsibility to be an assistant principal. My principal at the time was phenomenal. I learned so much from him, continue to think about him every day at work. And I just put into practice so much of what I learned from him. Worked with him for about 5 years, and he then decided he wanted to retire, and he wanted me to take over his position at the school. Sound familiar? Here we go again. And so I said, you know, I'm honored. Thank you for considering me for that position. But I'm not interested. You know, in my mind, I would have wanted to become an administrator at this point in my life when my boys are older, high school, middle school age. And so I said, you know, I was kind of thrown into this position and I'm really not interested in becoming a principal at all. I'm just not there at this time. And so he didn't accept no as an answer. He then went to his director, another director, not the one that asked me to interview for the assistant principal position, and told him that I was not interested in the position and that he needed reinforcement and help to convince me to become a principal. And I swear every day in my inbox, I had an email from this director saying, please, I will be here. I will support you. You're a natural leader. You can do this. I'll be here for you. And my husband, Chris, and I sat, we talked about it. I really was not feeling it at the time. He was a Florida virtual school teacher, and he said, God is providing for us. Look at this position he gave me. Now I have flexibility. And my fear was always that I would, miss out as a mom and that I'd have too many responsibilities as a principal and I wouldn't be able to enjoy my time with the boys and my time as a mom. And that was my biggest concern.
Is that what was holding you back along the way? Because you're clearly gifted in this area, right? You clearly have always wanted to be an administrator. You said so yourself. But what was it that whenever those opportunities presented themselves, you almost didn't want it?
Correct.
What was holding you back? What was causing some doubt in you? Was it fear? Was it wanting to focus on your family? Or what was it?
I think at the time it was just really enjoying and loving my role at the time and feeling like I wasn't done with that role. For the principal position, it was definitely my family. I did not want to be the absent mom. And I remember saying to my husband, it's great that you are going to have flexibility and that you will be able to be there, but I will be missing out as a mom. And so that was my greatest hesitation. And through much prayer and conversation with my husband, we decided, okay, you know what, if this is God's plan, then he will fling the door wide open like he did when I became an assistant principal, right? Because the job just landed in my lap. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want it. I didn't seek it. And it just landed in my lap. And so I decided that I would begin the process to actually interview for the position. In Broward County Schools, in order to interview for a principal position, you have to be part of what's called a principal preparation program. In order to get into that program, you have to go through a series of interviews in order to make it into the program.
Wow.
And so I said to my husband, this is like a 1 in 100 chance that this is actually going to happen because I have to go through all of these interviews, pass all these interviews, get into the program, then do the interviews for the actual position and get chosen. So this is probably not going to happen. And so sure enough, I kind of went through all the stages and, kept going on to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. And so I was like, okay, God, very clear. This is what you want me to do. And as I passed each step, I was feeling more and more confident. I then get to the point where I'm interviewing for the principal position, and there's multiple steps to that as well. One of the final steps is to interview through a community forum where various stakeholders from the school ask questions. The school community comes together to define what it is they're looking for in a leader. And, I'm an assistant principal at the school, so I interview for the community forum. I know the whole community forum. And then I get feedback. You're amazing. You're amazing. You've got this. This job is yours. You were the best by far. And I went to the next interview, which is really just a formality with higher level executives in the district. And the next thing I know, I get a call telling me that I didn't get the job.
Really?
And I was so confused. And I think that was the first time that I really experienced difficulty in my career.
Well, yeah, it's the first setback.
It's like, all right, what are you doing here, God? Like, I didn't even want this. So why did you have me go through all of this when the door was going to be slammed shut in my face? I don't understand. And so it was difficult. It was a difficult time in my life. It hits your pride also. Like, I thought I was good enough for the job. People told me I was good enough for the job, but clearly something is amiss because they're not giving me the job. And then I'm part of this principal preparation program, which entitles me to give up my summer for free and work summer school because as an aspiring principal, I need experience on leading schools,
You
right?
didn't get the job, but you're locked in for the extra work.
Right. And so the last thing I wanted at that point with a bruised ego and confusion, I just wanted to disconnect from work and have my summer and focus on my family. And instead I had to go to summer school. And I said, Marsha, you're going to go in there, you're going to do what you need to do, and you're going to do it well because that's who you are. But you're not going to give 1 minute extra. Just go in there, do what you need to do, focus on what needs to be done, go home and enjoy your family. And I did. The school that I was assigned to is called Pembroke Lakes Elementary.
I've heard of it.
And I slowly but surely fell in love with the school despite the negative feelings that I walked in with. And I fell in love with the people that were there. And the majority of the people were people from Pembroke Lakes Elementary because summer school was being held at their facility, right? And I remember every summer driving to school thinking, wow, this school is just 12 minutes from my house. This is great. And just little, positive things would just kind of pop up in a season where my mind wasn't necessarily in the most positive mindset, right? And I remember at the end of summer, I emailed the principal, just thanking her and telling her what a gem the school really is and how much I enjoyed my experience at the school. And so the school year started, and now I'm an assistant principal for the principal that got the position over me.
Oh, wow.
In a community that is very well aware that this has all transpired, right?
Wow.
And that was difficult too. That presented its own challenges.
Yeah, that's very humbling.
Very.
Maybe a little awkward too.
Very humbling.
So obviously the principal now knows about that she got the job over you. But then
yeah.
all the teachers know that?
All the parents
Wow.
know, all the kids know, it's a
Wow.
very public process, right? And so thankfully I loved the individual. She's an amazing person. She's wonderful. And so it wasn't difficult to work with her, but it was just difficult to work in that situation. And I remember driving home many days just crying to release all the tension of the day because you have people that are aware that there's some tension here and I want to kind of pick at that tension and maybe, bring that tension up and
Maybe they like to gossip. They want to hear all
absolutely.
the lowdown.
Absolutely. And if she turned left and they thought she should have turned right, guess who they came to?
Yeah.
Can you believe she turned left? Don't you think she should have turned right? And supporting her with the decisions that she would make despite what I thought, because she is the principal who has the right to make that decision. So that was very difficult. And then at around the end of August, so we had been working together for a couple of months through the summer and beginning of school year, and I get a call from another director of mine, and he said, I have an opening for a principal position at Pembroke Lakes Elementary, and I want you to apply. And then it all started to click. And I really understood the way that God moves his chess pieces so that everything fits into his picture in a perfect way. Being the principal at Pembroke Lakes Elementary has been one of the biggest blessings in my life. And I know that I was appointed by the school board, but I was handpicked for that position by God.
Wow. What I love about your story is every step of the way. Now, I'm sure you'll argue me on this, that you weren't perfect in it, but what I'm hearing is contentment. You were just content every step of the way. You wrestled with it. You wrestled with God, which I love that you're looking to God as the ultimate decider as to what job you have and when.
Right.
You weren't fighting the school board. You weren't fighting the principal you were placed under. You weren't rallying the troops, the teachers against the principal. You were wrestling with the Lord.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, every step of the way, you just were content. You did the job that you had to the best of your ability, which is probably what people saw in you and why they thought, man, she'd be great at the next level, which it almost feels backwards to what our culture will oftentimes convey, right? Like if you're trying to move up the ladder, you've got to dress for the job you want, not the job that you have. You know, you got to pursue it. You got to fight for it. You got to work really hard for it. And there's some truth to that.
Right.
But there's no contentment in the job that you currently have. There's no, how do I honor God in the job I'm in, rather than just trying to get to the next one.
Right. And that's often a question that I'm asked. You know, I've been at my school for 9 years now. I just concluded my 9th school year. And many people will say, like, what's next? You know, I've had directors say, you should really apply to be a director. Our area superintendent came to my school one day and he said, you know, you turned down this interview for a director position. I want to know why. And that was my response to him. My response was, I want to be where God needs me to be and where he can use me. And right now, I feel like he is using me right here and right now. And if he wants something changed, then that opportunity will open up. That door will fling wide open.
That's good. That's really good. And you said something I want to pick up on quickly here. You wrestled with moving up in your career because you wanted to be a mom. You didn't want to fall into the trap that I'm sure, I'm not a mom, but I'm sure is very easy to fall into, right? I mean, I have a job and I have kids myself, so I know it's easy to get consumed by our careers and to neglect our kids and not give them the time that we want. I'm sure it's amplified for a mom, you know. How did you navigate that? Because there's also like this mom guilt, right? Where you go to work and everyone's like, well, you really should be at home with your kids because your kids they're not going to turn out okay because you're not there. But then if you were to be a stay-at-home mom, they're going to be like, well, you know, you probably should go get a job and help support your family and have a career. And it's like, you can never win, right? You're always doing the wrong thing. So how did you overcome that? How do you navigate being a mom and leading a successful career and overcoming that guilt that it sounds like you had at one point?
Yeah, that mommy guilt is a real thing. We really, as moms, need to be coached by dads. I don't hear dad guilt. That's not a thing, is it? Is it a thing? I don't know.
It's moms have it way
I know.
rougher,
Why
right?
do we do that to ourselves, right? So yes, mom guilt is a real thing. I will say that I cannot do what I do without my husband. He not only takes on immeasurable family responsibilities when I cannot, but he also helps me behind the scenes. You know, in essence, Pembroke Lakes Elementary has 2 principals, one that's in everyone's face and one that's behind the curtain, helping to keep me afloat on days when I've had enough. You know, he is my AI before AI was a thing. You know, he always came up with brilliant ideas. You know, I'd come home and think like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. And he would just come up with these genius ideas, right? So my husband is a huge, huge part of that. But it's also about healthy rhythms in your life. I think many times we chase balance. And what I've learned through a Christian educator small group that I'm in is that balance is really, in essence, trying to chase perfection, right? Because you have to have this weight here and then equal weight here in order to have balance, in order to have that symmetry. And so essentially what we're doing is we're trying to chase perfection, which we know we can't do. And so it's an endless cycle of frustration and feeling upset that, or feeling like a failure that we are not finding that balance, right? And it's impossible if you think about it. I mean, my work week is set up where I work 5 days a week, sometimes evenings, sometimes weekends. And I have 2 days to be a mom and a wife, and some evenings as well. And so there really is no balance to having a career and having a family, but there are healthy rhythms that help us feel fulfilled in both roles. So one of my healthy rhythms is spending time with the Lord every morning and dedicating that time with him. Delving into the word. One of my friends in our small group sent a text message a year ago now saying, who wants to do a 365-day Bible study with me? And, if you know me, like, I will not start something that I know I can't finish. Like, I have just that kind of personality where if I'm going to start something, I have to finish it.
Now, what is a 365-day Bible study? I mean, are you meeting every single day
No,
for the year?
it's phenomenal.
Is it a devotional on your phones?
It's called the Bible Recap, and you read the entire Bible in 365 days.
Cool. Okay.
And it has a recap of what you read, because let's be real, a lot of times when us lay people read the Bible, we think like, what did I just read? I have no idea what that said.
No, it happens to me too. Especially in Leviticus, Numbers, it can get a little tough there.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care what kind of version of the Bible you're reading. You're like, what did I just read? And so that has been wonderful in my life, to just delve into the word every single morning. So much so that I completed it last year. And I said, I'm going to do this again because I learned so much and I feel like I missed so much. And so I'm doing it again. And now my husband's doing it with me. Our oldest son is doing it as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And for Christmas, I got our little guy and my niece the Bible Recap for Kids that has just like a little condensed version of the readings and a God shot. They call it the God shot, right? And the focus is always to see how Jesus's character shows up and what we can learn about him. Even in the Old Testament. And that's been wonderful. So that's one of my healthy rhythms that helps me be a better wife, a better mom, a better human. Another healthy rhythm for myself is having dinner with my family. That's so extremely important to me, to just sit around the table. Some days I'm like, put on that TV because I can't take one more minute of peopling, right?
I know those days.
Even the people I love the most, right? But just having them in my presence and close to me is enough on some days. And other days, we're turning off the TV and we're having great conversations. So, it looks different, but sitting around the table is so important. We also are very good about putting our children to bed every night. And so Chris and I take turns with, what child we put to bed. But that time before they go to bed is so precious, especially the older they get. It's just a time when everything is turned off. The house is quiet. There's no TV on. They're not on their electronics. And it's just you and your child. And, I drive home with my son every day. And, I always talk to him and ask him very probing questions, but we never have a conversation quite like we do just before bed. And so that's a very important thing for me as well. Another healthy cycle that I have as well. And there's seasons too.
Right.
There's seasons where I'm very busy and my husband has to carry the majority of the load. And then there are other times where I'm not, and I could just pour into my kids. My last healthy rhythm is observing the Sabbath. It is something that we delved into in our educational Christian leadership group. And when I learned that the first thing that God made holy was time, I was like, wow, I never realized that. And so, I'm not perfect, obviously.
Sure.
There are some weeks where I just feel like I can't observe the Sabbath, and I don't, even though I should. But for the most part, I do. And every Saturday, that's my time to relish in my relationship with Jesus, to delve deeper into my relationship with my kids, to dedicate time to my husband. And when something comes up, my response is, it's Sabbath. I'm not doing that. It's my Sabbath. I'm not doing that. And it's just like, drop the mic. It's Sabbath. Like, what else needs to be said? Yeah,
Enough
exactly.
Said. That's phenomenal. What I'm hearing you say too is, you're not chasing perfect balance, right? Because
Right.
you're right. What is perfect balance? What would be the perfect way to administer your schedule, right? I don't know that we could come up with a perfect way. We'd probably come up with different ways.
Right.
But what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're prioritizing. You're
Absolutely.
prioritizing God in your life, your relationship with the Lord. You're prioritizing your relationship with your husband, your relationship with your kids. School is a priority, but you're making sure that you're getting time where it needs to be at the right places at the right time.
Exactly.
And man, the practice of the Sabbath, that's a whole nother podcast in
It's
itself.
yeah.
And there's a reason why, just like you said, God made it holy, and He didn't need to rest when he did creation, right? On the seventh day He rested, but He did to model it to us. He sewed it into the fabric of creation. We all need that regular rhythm of rest. That's
Right.
really good. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that.
And you know, in leadership, you don't often hear that. You know, in our professional developments at work, we're not hearing rest. You know, I grew up with a grandma that would say, you know, she was a hard worker, she was a tough woman, and she would say, rest? I'm gonna get plenty of rest when I die. I'm not resting now.
I'll rest when I'm dead.
Yeah. Like now is the time to go and chase after it and work hard and go. And so, you know, being raised with that message in your head, you're like, wait, rest is holy and I need to do it. Like, okay, sign me up.
Yeah. Well, and as Christians, we should be some of the hardest workers out there.
Right.
But also some of the best at resting.
Right.
I firmly believe that. That's really good.
And one of the things that I shared with faculty and staff about rest is the earth has that rhythm as well. You know, farmers have to give the soil rest. And if soil needs rest, what does that say about us and how much we need rest as well? And I think that message is not out there enough.
Wow. That's really good. That kind of leads me to my next question. What values or beliefs have shaped the way you lead your school? You know, that you just mentioned there, you speak to your faculty, you speak to your teachers about rest. That's neat. Tell me more about that. What values and beliefs how does that impact the way you lead, and what do you maybe even communicate to them? You know, how are you teaching them in that way?
So my approach is obviously anchored in my faith. I like to lead with integrity, with compassion, with a servant's heart. And I aim to have grace during difficult conversations and in difficult situations. I aim to speak truth in love and to precede the decisions I need to make with prayer, and to then make those decisions in wisdom so that it honors God.
Now, that's amazing. Is that different from how schools are usually led? You know, not to pick on any other principals or anything, but that's not normal, right? It's a very biblical approach.
Right.
How does that play out in your school?
So is it the norm? Probably not. As Christian educational leaders, we have come together in small group to really learn from each other and learn how to live out our faith as leaders. My great friend, Mike Castellano.
Shout out to Mike.
Yes, shout out to him, and principal colleague and City Rever. He always says we are not leaders who are Christians, but we are Christians who are leaders. And we have prayed for many years together for God to make us bold Christian leaders, to give us eyes to see where He needs us to be, ears to hear individuals that need His light. And so it's probably not the norm, but I so much appreciate the educational Christian group that we have, because we're undercover agents out there, and many of my colleagues that I sit with in meetings all the time, they showed up at this meeting and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know you were a Christian. Like, this is great,
So you'll have some kind of Christian prayer time or Bible study or something in the school that's optional, obviously, and then they'll choose to show up and then it'll catch you off guard.
Correct, yes.
That's funny. It's like this big surprise. Oh, like they're undercover agents, like you said. Oh, wow, I didn't know you were on that side too. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so John Lash, shout out to John Lash. He actually leads us along with Anton, who, they help us, delve into the Word, study what it looks like to be Christian leaders in a public entity and how we play out that role in a way that abides by the policies and the statutes before us.
Wow, that's really cool. And yes, shout out to those guys. Those are two great men.
Yes.
So you've been a principal for 9 years now, and I want to know, what are some of the unique challenges and difficulties that you've had to walk through? Because when I hear I've been a principal for 9 years, I hear you walked through COVID as a principal of an elementary school.
Yes.
And I remember the Zoom calls every day at my job and being stressed out. I cannot imagine what that was like. So COVID and just anything else that's come up in your leadership, what would have been some of the hardest challenges?
So I remember distinctly sitting at my desk and thinking, wow, just when we thought things couldn't get harder in education, they just have. I can say from my school in particular, the transition from brick and mortar to learning online was not a difficult transition. We have been a Microsoft Showcase school for 8 years, and essentially what that means is that we are recognized globally as leaders in integrating technology in our instruction.
Wow.
All of our students in our school, kindergarten through 5th grade, have one-to-one laptops, and many of our students' work was already in Canvas. Their assignments were in there, and there was a system for them to turn in their assignments into Canvas. And so for our teachers that taught the younger grades where they didn't have that, they were able to lean on their colleagues and they got their materials up and running in no time. Learning teams was a little difficult. We had never done that before, but that was a minor hurdle to overcome. What really became challenging was engaging our learners during that time.
Yeah.
When they're in your classroom, you have a captive audience, you're controlling the environment. And when you're on Teams, not so much,
I cannot imagine trying to entertain or keep a third grader captive over a webcam.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
Things are happening in the background. Inappropriately dressed individuals, individuals doing inappropriate things in the background. The stories were, looking back, hysterical. In the moment, just, something else. But that presented a challenge, was really engaging our learners. And then we gave students the option to come back to school. And that brought a whole nother set of challenges, which was first and foremost lunch, right? We had the same amount of time to get the same kids through lunch, except they needed to sit 6 feet apart. And our cafeteria tables are not designed for kids to sit 6 feet apart. And so we had to get creative with how we manage that. And I actually enjoyed that time, believe it or not, because I am a natural problem solver. I enjoy situations like that. It's like a puzzle for me to just try to figure it out. And I created like a COVID leadership team, and I brought people together that wanted to help me figure things out. And so I would collaborate with this COVID leadership team, and we were awesome. We were rocking and rolling. We had great innovative ideas. And then came recess. Let's face it, when you're 6, 7, and 8 years old, you just want to play tag. You don't want to play 6 feet apart.
Gosh.
And so our teachers really did an amazing job of being innovative and creative with what they did with their kids, how they engaged their kids. Many teachers created little bags for each individual kid with chalk
wow.
and bubbles and jump rope, things that they could do individually. And I really upset a lot of parents. I'm a germaphobe, so that was a
Must have been a
personally
really hard
difficult
year
time.
for you.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, and I was determined that we were not going to have a COVID breakout in our school. And I upset some parents, thank you for wanting to come into the school, but I don't want your germs in our school. So teams us. Parents wanted their kids to play on the playground. And I kept saying, like, I don't know how to keep kids 6 feet apart on the playground.
Yeah, I can imagine, just knowing that season of life. I'm sure some parents were like, you need to open the school now. Everything's perfectly fine. And some are like, don't open the school. I'm struggling with just doing it online even. They're two polar
Absolutely.
opposites. How do you deal with people like that, that are maybe frustrating you, or like, how do you lead people like that can be difficult to lead?
Not well sometimes. I mean, I have my moments, right, where
No one's
I
perfect.
reflect back and I say, like, I probably could have said that a little better, but for the most part, with grace and through prayer and a lot of internal coaching, but the policies are the policies. And if you don't like that your child has to wear a mask, I apologize, but that's the district's policy at this time. The district's policy is that students need to be 6 feet apart. And so in many ways, I was just the messenger.
Yeah, this is how we're doing it. I'm sorry.
And yes, there are schools that have their kids playing on the playground and they're breaking district policy. And this principal doesn't do that. So if you want your child to play on a playground at this time, then you need to take your child to a school where they're doing that, because I am not going to break district policy and I'm not going to jeopardize the health of our students. So yeah, it was difficult. It was a difficult time, but it also gave us opportunity to really appreciate the importance of a solid educational foundation. So many of our students ended preschool early. They learned kindergarten online the entire year. They then had the option to come back into the building in first grade. Many of them opted not to. And the first time some students stepped foot back into a school from preschool was in second grade.
Wow.
And that obviously has academic impacts. As I said, the instruction wasn't the problem. It was engaging the learner, monitoring their understanding. How do you monitor their understanding when they're doing their work on paper you can't even see? And so that definitely presented academic challenges for our students and gaps that we're still addressing now. Those students are just entering fifth grade now, and we're still addressing those academic gaps for some students and helping them to catch up. And then there's the social aspect of it all. For these students in particular that left preschool and never returned to a building until second grade, there's major social gaps there. There's a lot of social learning that transpires between kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, and first grade,
Right,
that these
if they're not at
students...
school, they're probably not doing anything during that entire time.
Right.
They're just at home.
And many of the parents that elected to keep their children home, they elected to keep them home because they were fearful of COVID.
Yeah.
And so these weren't families that were, taking their kids to the playground after school or having them, have a play date after school. These were families that were truly sticking to their house and not really branching out too far. And so we can, as a faculty and staff, really appreciate the work that is done in both of those fronts at a very early age for students. A lot of times you can walk into a kindergarten class and as an adult, you can think like, oh, they're coloring, they're adding single digit numbers. I mean, this is no big deal. And COVID gave us an opportunity to really see how important that foundation is. And I always tell our faculty, you don't win a race at the start line, but you can lose it at the start line. And COVID gave us an opportunity to really see
Wow.
how much our students benefit from preschool and kindergarten and first grade
It was
instruction.
an opportunity for you to really appreciate the work you're doing and to see how it's impacting these kids. That's really good.
Absolutely.
You mentioned you lead, the school leads globally technology-wise. What's your take on AI? You know, how are you navigating that? Do you have third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders trying to use it already, or is that not a thing yet?
So it's not a thing in our classrooms quite yet. Our teachers are definitely using it to help facilitate the tasks that they need to do. Mm-hmm. I'm currently trying to use it to recreate our master schedule.
Cool. Okay.
I will let you know if I'm successful. Thus far, I have not been.
Wow. Okay.
But yes, I think it's an amazing tool. And when you look at the research with AI, cell phones, it took cell phones 7 years to reach that 100 million user number. The web took 3 years, and AI took 3 months
Wow.
to reach that user capacity. And
what it's capable of, I haven't wrapped my brain around the internet yet. So trying to wrap my brain around AI, I think is just going to be impossible. But I can't help but look at it and just say, I don't know what I'm staring at, but this thing's going to change the world. Right?
Absolutely.
And traditionally, education has been you learn how to read, which is great, but then you learn how to write, you learn how to do math, you learn science, and all three of those things AI is incredible at. You know, I remember when I was in school, the joke or the saying, whatever you want to call it, during math class was, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket every day, right? You got to learn these multiplication tables.
Little did they know.
And now I have a supercomputer in my pocket.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to shift education-wise with AI?
So I think AI is really going to force our educators to change the depth of knowledge that they're trying to reach with children. The days of simple recall are gone because AI can do that. And so teachers will definitely have to create assignments and activities for students to develop critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
So that they can use AI as a tool to create this product and then look at it and discern what pertains, what meets the requirements of this task, and create a polished final piece using AI.
That's good. Man, there's a lot coming, I imagine, in these coming years
it's
with
very exciting.
AI and technology. Going back to your leadership and your time as a principal, I just want to ask too, just simply, how have you seen God's blessing over your time there and over your school in general?
I mean, how much time do we have here, Josh?
Plenty of time.
I mean, there's lots of stories I can tell, but one that I really want to highlight is based around our budget. And I thank you for this question and this opportunity to share with our listeners, because budget is mathematically based. It's a very objective topic, right? 1 + 1 always equals 2. Except when Jesus' hand is involved. And so I just want to quickly go back to last year's budget to tell a quick story, and then I'll fast forward to this year. Last year, Broward County Public Schools faced their very first major budget cut. So much so that the district changed their approach to completing budgets. Where principals used to always complete the budgets on our own, they assigned us to budget analysts and had the budget analysts meet with us. Essentially, they were inputting all the information. They were ensuring that all the requirements were met. And we were really just there to say, well, let's kind of move this money from here to there, or let's eliminate this, and make those kinds of decisions. My budget meeting last year was on a Friday afternoon at 3:00. It was the last budget meeting of the season for this particular budget analyst. So she had been in budget meetings for weeks. And As you can imagine, she comes on this Teams call and she is just exhausted. And I said to her, don't worry, we're going to be easy. You don't have to worry. I've been praying over this budget and you're going to see we're going to be easy. And she kind of chuckles like, yeah, I'm sure you are. And so she's punching away, doing what she needs to do. And she kind of tilts her head and she's like, wow, this is odd. You have money to spend. And I said, you see, I told you we were going to be easy. I've been praying over this budget. And she says, you know, Mrs. Wagner, I've had a really long few weeks. You're my last meeting. I'm sure I'm missing something. Would you mind if we just end the meeting here? Give me time Monday morning to look over your budget again to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I'll email you and let you know where we are. Sure, no problem. Monday morning, first thing in the morning, her email comes through and she says, I checked it and I had my supervisor check it. And you have $45,000 that you can spend. Please let me know how you want me to allocate those funds.
During a budget cut year, you had extra money. Wow.
And it was the first time that I really noticed the difference between walking in faith and not. You know, as you can imagine, my colleagues, the district in general, the air was thick. People were tense. You know, we went to a principal's meeting and, you know, my colleague sitting next to me, like, did you check your budget? It was released at 3:55. Did you see it? And I was like, no, I really haven't had a chance to see it yet. And they're looking at me like, what is wrong with her? She hasn't checked her budget, you know? And I was at peace the whole time because I prayed about it. And to me, God's going to move those chess pieces the way he needs to move them, right?
Wow.
And so I still have the screenshot of that email from her because it was just this moment of God's hand showing so clearly. And so now fast forward to this year, we are continuing to experience tightness in budget, and the district has taken the same approach. They're having us meet with budget analysts, and so I have a different budget analyst that met with us. And I said to her, you don't have to worry. We're going to be easy. I've been praying over this budget. And she kind of looked at me a little odd, and she's kind of going through and she's noticing our bottom number, and she says, wow, you're an exception. And I said, I'm used to hearing that. And the room erupts in laughter. And I said, it's funny, but it is true. And it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with God. And so she gets to the bottom line, and I have a positive number there. Now, let me backtrack a little bit to tell you that this past school year, our school received federal grant money, about $300,000. And we knew that we were at risk of losing that grant. And so we worked tirelessly from day one. I mean, open house. I am talking to the parents about filling out this application so that we can qualify for these grant dollars again. And every opportunity we had, PTA was involved, teachers were involved. Everyone was really full force ahead trying to get these dollars once again for our school. And I prayed hard. You know, part of the funding, I use it for to pay for the salary of teachers that provide interventions for our students. So our most fragile students, kindergarten through 5th grade. And so I would pray and I would say, God, you know why we need this money. You know how I use this money. And I need you to help me, like part the waves, make a way for us, please. We need this money. And the deadline came, and we didn't meet the requirement, and we didn't qualify for the federal dollars. And I didn't get upset, I didn't question, and I wasn't concerned. When I had our school leadership meeting, I informed them that we didn't make the cut. We did not have the minimum requirement to get those additional dollars. And I said to them, I don't want you to be worried. I'm not worried. God's got us, and he's going to show up for us. We just need to wait and see how this all plays out. In addition to losing that funding, we are also projected to be 20 students under enrolled than we are this year. And in a school, students equal money, right? We get paid for students that attend our school. And so if 20 less students will be attending our school next year, if that's the projection, then you would anticipate that your budget would be about a teacher's pay less than what you currently have. And so when she gets to that number and she says, you have money to spend. She says, if you don't mind, give me a minute. Let me mute my mic and let me just double check. And I said to her, you can double check.
I'm used to this.
I said, you can double check, but I assure you, you did not make a mistake. I said, I told you that I've prayed over this budget and you're seeing evidence of this. She says, okay, now you're giving me chills. So she goes on mute. I look over to my secretary, who does not share the same beliefs that I have. And she says to me, I know what you're going to say. And you're right. This is nothing short of a miracle because I'm good at math. And this math is not mathing. It is not adding up, right? In what world do you lose just about $400,000 out of your budget and you still have money to spend? 1 + 1 was not equaling 2 in that budget. And so she comes back and she says, I checked it. I'm not really seeing any errors. Let me have my supervisor check. And I said, go ahead, do what you need to do. See the supervisor come on and she's looking and she's like, yeah, it looks good.
Wow.
So she comes on and she says, all right, you have this money to spend. How do you want to spend this money? And we were able to add a program to our school.
Wow.
And looking back at the way God worked it all, I said, that's why you didn't give us the federal money. Because if you had, someone would have felt that they could take credit for that.
Wow.
Oh, it was that message I sent. Oh, it was, that flyer that I printed. It was that event that I spoke to the parents at. And in this way, the only person that could receive glory is Jesus.
Wow.
And for me, it's such a humbling experience to be part of God's plan that way, to see God responding in that way. You know, who are we? We're just this tiny little school in Pembroke Pines, right? But that he cares so much for us.
Yeah.
That he, my prayer was like, give us the funds we need to sustain what we have. And his answer back to me was, I gave you money last year and I'm going to give you more this year. And you just want to keep what you have, but I'm going to let you add to what you have. And so my encouragement to the listeners are, first and foremost, pray. We forget the power of prayer. If you're praying and the answer is no or not yet, buckle your seatbelt because God's got something major.
Yeah.
He's got something major planned for you. He's going to exceed what you're asking for because he did. He gave me a no for that Title I funding, but what he had in store at the end was amazing. And I hope that it serves as a reminder of the God that we serve. A lot of times I feel like we think that, God performed those miracles back then, and he won't do that for me or in my life. But he does. You bring the canisters, he's going to fill each and every one with oil. You have water, he's going to make wine. You have this much food, he's going to multiply it so that you can feed everyone. We have a God who is intimately involved with our lives, and he is a good God that wants to provide and wants to exceedingly and abundantly give us in our life.
What I what I admire about your leadership is that you lead with faith. And I'm sure those who don't share your faith, they look at you and just say, "Oh, she's just an optimist." And then things get tough, things get hard, and they're like, I don't know how she's still optimistic about this, but she still seems okay, which probably makes them feel okay. And they feel safe under your leadership because you're marching forward with faith, knowing who's got it, who's in control.
Absolutely.
And that's beautiful. That says a lot about not only your leadership, but it's for myself, for our listeners, leading with faith. That's a powerful apologetic to all who are around us, and it's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's otherworldly what we have in Jesus.
Yeah.
I got to ask you too, what's something about your school that you wish more people in the community understood?
I think just simply the excellence with which people conduct themselves and complete their work with. You know, as I said, I feel like I was hand selected by God to be a principal at that school. Our assistant principal, she's new to our school this school year, not a new assistant principal, but new to our school. And, you know, God flung doors open to put her where she is right now. And I feel that way about every person that is in our building. I feel that they have been hand selected by God to be in our school for a specific purpose. We have teachers that are just so invested in our students, who just pour so much of themselves into kids, and not just academically, but also in an individual, in looking at who the child is as a person. 80% of the clubs that we have in our school have started up because students have approached the teacher and have said, I really wish we had this kind of a club.
Cool.
And the teacher then approaches me and says, I'd like to start this club. And my response is, I love it. I love the idea, but I don't have the budget to pay for the stipend for you to lead the club. And I think most teachers would say, yeah, I'm out then. I can't do it. And that has not happened once in my school. Every teacher has said, oh, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I mean, granted, the stipend isn't huge, but, you know, they're investing their time, their energy, their effort, their love all throughout the school day, all year long.
Because they care.
And then they're volunteering their time after school, right?
Wow.
That's more attention, more time, more energy, time away from their family. And they're doing this for our students to build who they are outside of students and build who they are as individuals. And, you know, God always provides, and he does provide. End of year, I've, you know, been able to say, guess what? We have money in our budget now, and I can go back and I can pay you for that leadership position that you've taken with that club. But what an amazing experience it is as a leader to have someone come to me and say, I want to do this just for the kids. That's it. Like, there's nothing in it for me. I just want to do this for them. We had our drama club. They put on this amazing Moana play. I mean, we could compete with any performing arts school. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. And as the principal, I just sat there and I thought, this is amazing. And I had nothing to do with this. Like, this wasn't me saying, oh, do this and do that. This is teachers that have strengths and gifts and who share that readily with our students. For our students, simply for our students. And our community came together. Parents volunteered to bring their time and their talents and their efforts. It was just such a beautiful way for our community to come together. And when I stood up and to thank our 3 teachers, I said, this is why our school is as excellent as it is. You know, we had a dad that was taking professional pictures and professional video of the night, who volunteered his services. We had another dad who voluntarily printed the signs. I mean, we just had so many people coming together and bringing the best of what they had. And that's what really makes us an excellent school, is that we come together, we give the best of what we have for our students.
That's beautiful. It sounds like you have an incredible culture over there at your school, a culture of people who care and love those students and want to see them grow and learn.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate your compliments and acknowledgement of who I am as a Christian leader. But I really need to just throw it right back at you as a pastor at City Rev. I've always been a believer my entire life, but I've never had the relationship I have with Jesus as I do now. And my life has completely changed while I've been sitting in those chairs every Sunday, every Wednesday in small group, listening to podcasts. So I appreciate the way that you've invested in me, and I can then share those blessings with others in my life.
Well, thank you for that. And right back at you. It's all God and God's doing in bringing us all together. So thank you for that encouragement. Well, I'll get you out on this. One last question. If you could cast a vision for what our city's schools would look like in 10 years, what would you hope for? What kind of legacy do you hope to leave at your school specifically too?
So I hope this happens quicker than 10 years, but, I'll just say in the near future, I hope that our students will transform schools to not just be a place that's focused on academics, but that they would be world changers in the name of God. As government employees, we are very limited in what we can do to bring religion into our schools. But our students are not. And so my prayer is that we would have students that would pray together at lunch, students that would show God's love in very unique ways, that students would turn to another student and say, "Why are you always so nice to me?" Or, "Why are you my only friend and no one else wants to be my friend?" And that student could look at that other student and say, "Well, I have a friend like that, and his name is Jesus, and I want to tell you a little bit about him." And that we would reap a great harvest through the work that our students can do within our schools.
Wow.
And that the Holy Spirit can do through them in their hearts and sowing the fruits of the Spirit in their lives and in their actions. In terms of my legacy, I would say that I hope and I pray that I'm remembered as more than just a principal that led a successful academic school. I pray that people would remember me as someone who pointed to God, both through my words and in my actions, through, difficult situations in my personal life that I've shared with them, through transparency, that they would remember me as someone who brought hope to situations that seemed dire and hopeless by bringing in the Word of God and shining the light of God, and that they would remember me as someone that led with love.
Wow, that's powerful. And what you said there is going to stick with me, that oftentimes the teachers are limited as to what they can bring in to schools, but the students are not. And how that might apply to many other spheres of influence that we find ourselves in. That's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today,
Thank
Marsha. It has been a joy. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise.
And well, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the City Rev Life Podcast. Be sure to tune in next week, where we'll continue having conversations with other local leaders in our city. See you then.
Thank you so much for listening to the City Rev Life Podcast. Feel free to subscribe and leave a rate and review. We love it when you share it with your friends on social media, so don't forget to tag us at cityrev.church. If you're interested in more resources, download our City Rev Church app and follow us on social media. Have a great day.